everyone, and welcome to Wild Moments brought to you by explore.org. I feel like I'm not sure how to do this anymore because I haven't been around for so long, but I'm really excited to chat to all of you and see how you're doing. But I'm also excited to say hi to Ben. How's it going, Ben?
Hello, Charlotte. Hello, everybody. It's lovely to be back. Yeah, all is good, thank you, from a fairly drab and dreary Hoedspruit, which has been the way of it for the last week. But I believe where you are in Johannesburg is no different.
Yeah, it's been a little depressing, but I was reminded again today that it's good for all the nature.
It
Yes.
is. It is. I was horrified to see only about 3, 4 weeks ago, all of this lovely green grass that's been around was already beginning to brown off and look a little bit unhappy. So, yeah, I don't know how many mills we've had here in the last week or so, but we've had plenty. We've had some localized flooding. I was in Kruger at the weekend, and a lot of the side roads, or the majority of the gravel roads, were all closed. So, yeah, good little deluge for the bush.
Yeah, and I was thinking about the last time that we had late rains, and I think that it was about, can't remember which year, but it was about beginning of March, and I think that's the latest I've experienced. And what's the latest in the year that you've experienced rains from the summer?
Well, yeah, probably also sometime early March, I would think. I don't keep a particular log of it, so I remember random rains in July and August and Junes and things. But yeah, I think in terms of expected rains, yeah, late February, early March is probably about it. But I always consider February to be most likely either the wettest or the hottest month. It seems to be a month of extremes.
Yeah, well, I guess we'll only be able to talk about it again in March if they are really late. But even though we are complaining, this is not unusual. We have experienced Feb rains before and late Feb rains into March. But we hope that that means that all the ephemeral pans are nice and full, the dams are nice and full, and hopefully that means that it can sustain the animals in the bush through the dry season.
Absolutely, that's the plan. Yeah, it was pretty hard for them leading up to the last month or two. So yeah, let's hope that this late rains fills everything up and there is a little bit less pressure. We don't have to wait so long coming into next year's or later this year's rains.
Yeah, because this dry season was, I can only remember it happening once before that the dams that I knew well absolutely dried up. And there was just a cracked bottom, a muddy puddle that was not more than a meter squared.
I think it was really strange though how localized it was, having, been into places like in the sands, the northern sands. There were dams that I have seen dry up before which weren't dry, and dams that I haven't seen dried up before, completely bone dry, cracked earth, as you said. So it seemed to be quite localized within very specific areas.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, we'll see what happens in March. For now, we're thankful for the rain, even though we're whinging.
Yes, we're not whinging, we're commenting upon it.
We're intelligently giving our comments based on our expertise.
Hmm.
Well, we have a couple hellos coming through, and of course, you can send us hellos because we're live and interactive. So if you're new to the Africam community, please go ahead and let us know. We love to welcome new members to our community. It's a lovely space where you can discuss animal behaviors, you can watch our different cameras, and you get to experience African wildlife from afar. So that's always a gift. And for if this is the first time you're joining us for Wild Moments, then, as you would know, because we have our cameras constantly on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every single day of the year, it means that we can pick out some really special moments. And that's what we do here at Wild Moments. So, at least this time, we don't have a theme, but sometimes we do, like at Halloween or something like that. But this week, we're just going through some cool moments that we've seen. But first, we'll go through some hellos. We've got some usual names, which I love to see. April Owl says, "Good morning, everyone from a sunny Connecticut. You've got cherry iced tea by your side and you're happy to be here." Ben, what do you have by your sides besides some sunscreen, which is so valuable at this
Here's
time?
some unnecessary sunblock up there. Yeah, I had very boring water, but it's still important to keep hydrated even when it's not 40 degrees outside.
It is very important. It will make sure that you have good kidney function and also make your skin nice and glowing and hydrated, which is obviously the reason for drinking it.
Still waiting for that. Obviously, need to drink a little more.
Dear NC says, hello, Trish and Ben. Thank you for both being here early morning before the daylight here in Seattle. And you're ready with your hot coffee. Nice. Amber Co says, waving hello with thanks to all for today's show. You've got hot coffee and a donut this morning with 9-degree Fahrenheit temperatures. Ooh, that's cold. I have, sorry, DNC. Yes, that is cold. I feel sorry for you, but I am still fixated on your coffee and your donut because I only recently realized how good a coffee and a donut is together. And I now know why in shows that I watch, policemen eat that and drink that together. It's a great combination. Jan Powers says, hi everyone. Hi Jan. It's so nice to hear your name. Bridget McKinney says, hi Trishala and Ben. Hi Bridget. Jack DeBoer says, hi guys. Caro's in the house as well and saying hi to both of us. Of course, you've got milk and a peanut butter spoon. Sounds nice. Oh, Jack DeBoer. I don't think I've ever heard you tell us what you're eating or drinking, but today you're saying you're eating French toast very quickly this morning. Very nice. Casper's Third Ghost says, happy Thursday, Trish and Ben, and all from Milwaukee with hot coffee. Lovely. And Andy says, good afternoon. Greetings and salutations on a wonderful Thursday from Florida. Oh, Andy, you sound so happy. I hope that means that there's sunshine in Florida. Jean Gale says, good morning from Seattle. It's before dawn and I'm here with my coffee and winter rain. I am thankful that even though it's rainy here in South Africa across many regions, at least it's warm. Zygote, hi Zygote, you say hi to both Ben and I, and namaste to you too, Zygote, and you're having sand roasted peanuts. How exotic.
Sand roasted peanuts, dry roasted. I'm unaware of sand roasted peanuts. I'm intrigued.
I am too. Maybe Zygote can tell us what that means. If it was a typo, though, you can also let us know, Zygote. Anyway, we have some cool clips. So how about we delve into the first one? Now, I understand that we've been looking at this lioness at Nkoro, and everyone's a little bit concerned. So we're going to try and figure out what potentially could be affecting this lioness and what the result of that could be. So she is, I mean, I haven't seen this clip, but I imagine that she's in pretty bad condition. So let's have a look and let's try to decipher what's going on. Oh, I was about to say from the first angle, she doesn't look terrible, but now you can see her ribs are exposed, her hip bones are exposed. She's clearly not eating.
Very emaciated, yeah. I know there was some debate we were having as to whether it would be an old lion or a young one, but I would say from that, she doesn't look particularly old. Just from the head and from what I can see, it's hard to say for sure, of course, but I wouldn't have said that she's that way just due to age. There is definitely something physiological wrong there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm having a look at the ears and the paws as well. She doesn't look old. There was also a bit of discussion about which pride this could potentially be, where she's from in this area in Nkoro. It's pretty east. It's there's access to the Kruger or through the Kruger. very easily. So she could be from a nomadic pride. She could be from the Nkuhuma pride, although she doesn't look familiar to me. And she could be one of the Torchwoods as well.
Yeah, but she is very, very skinny, certainly. I mean, to me, again, I am no expert wildlife veterinarian. I would say it looks like sort of classic bovine tuberculosis or TB from that level of emaciation, but it looks extreme, certainly. Often when I think of TB, I think of skinny lions, certainly, but that one does look almost to next level. What I don't see is any swollen lymph glands, which you often do see with TB. But I'm sure you would agree with me, Trish. I mean, we heard we were seeing this about an hour ago, so I have done a little bit of digging into lion diseases, and there are more than I realised, certainly.
Yes,
She's
absolutely. And
very skinny.
I don't think I've ever seen a lioness like this. Actually, I've seen one lioness like this. It was a Chimungue lioness, and she was on death's door when I saw her like this. But she was not moving. She was on the road and just would not move. So there we're looking at no energy, lethargy, and I'm not seeing this in this lioness. And we don't know what the Chimungue lioness died of. But I agree with you that it feels TB-ish. And then we also know that, I mean, I guess we don't know if there were other viruses in the area um, that are common. So we've seen TB. When I say common, I mean like, once a year you might hear about a lion who had TB. But I can't say that I've heard of lions who have had the other viruses that I've seen on my list. Oh, and like you said, Ben, there's a lot more than I expected on that list
And
of
even
potential.
things like canine distemper has been recorded in lions. It
Yes.
seems particularly more in East Africa. That's not something that I really thought about, but it's like leukemia variants. There's a feline COVID, obviously feline HIV. There's herpes virus, which that one I, having done a bit of reading, I thought was interesting in terms of the fact that it messes with their sense of smell and therefore removes appetite, which I found quite interesting to read, or I'm sure horribly unpleasant. And yeah, and then a whole host of other pathogens and bacterias and things which I'm not even going to try and pronounce. But interesting to see there are so many. But as you said, they seem to come in, say, cycles. But if a new if there's a burst in the population and the youngsters are more susceptible to it, you see they seem to occur in more sort of 4 or 6 or 10 year periods.
Exactly. And even going back to thinking about TB, we know TB, even in humans, to take a significant amount of time, at least a couple months, and maybe even years before it reaches this pinnacle of death. But this seems to have happened in quite a short space of time. I did a little research and had a look at when the last sighting of the Torchwoods were, if she is indeed part of the Torchwood Pride. And the last sighting that we had on the cameras at Nkoro was the 8th of Feb or somewhere around there. And nobody picked up, I didn't see any kind of deterioration. So either whatever this animal has caught has deteriorated their body very quickly in a matter of weeks, which could tell me that it's a parvovirus. But I think it's more likely that this is not a Torchwood and is someone coming in from the Kruger. Also, it's only two lionesses, and the Torchwoods are a huge pride.
Yeah, I don't recognize her either, but I agree for that level of emaciation to have occurred in a period of 2 weeks. I mean, that's a swift acting, fairly virulent problem. So I'd agree. The fact that I we don't recognize her, nobody else, to my knowledge at least, has said that they recognize either of those lionesses, and I know we have some eagle-eyed and avid followers. Then I think it is most likely that maybe, yeah, on their hunt for food, water, whatever it may be, or probably not water at the moment, they've stumbled into Nkoro.
Yeah. Well, if you have any information about IDs for this lioness, or maybe you're a vet, and I know we have a few of them in our chats, um, and it looks familiar or it looks similar to maybe what you would see in domestic cats, because that's also something I've been seeing, is that a lot of the viruses that domestic cats seem to be able to catch, it applies to the big cats too, to some extent. So if something looks familiar, whether it's IDs, whether it's the condition of the animals, let us know, because at this point it's all conjecture from Ben and me. Uh, oh, W. Bouchard, you say, will the rangers intervene? It is unlikely. Well, I mean, first we'll talk about intervention in general. When it comes to intervention of wild animals, it is almost always up to the management of that particular park. There are areas or that particular game reserve. There are mm, like larger bodies in public game reserves that are owned by sandparks, for example. So those are national reserves that may have um, like a blanket authority on what to do with animals that are sick or injured. But when it comes to private reserves, they will have their own particular management and their own particular way of dealing with animals who are sick and injured. But generally, if that injury or that sickness is a result of just the natural way in which animals exist, then they're unlikely to intervene. Karu, you say, oh, awful, poor thing. I mean, when you think about what this lioness must go through, it is really awful. Because I don't know if she's not eating because she doesn't have an appetite or because she's unable to make a kill.
There's also the fact that maybe she is eating, but her body is just not able to process what she's eating and utilize it, which I didn't see any evidence of limping. There was no obvious injury. So, and she looked to be moving smoothly enough, which leads me to think that she probably is capable of hunting. So it may just be that, as we know, when you get very, very sick and you have immune problems, the body, doesn't matter how much sustenance you put in it, it's just unable to put it to where it's supposed to be. So if it is a fairly unpleasant disease, it may not be a loss of appetite or a lack of ability to catch, because she'll scavenge as well.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that because there's feline peritonitis, that is the inflammation of the lining in the gut and in the stomach. And I wonder, and apparently that's, at least from my reading, is a result of having a virus previously, but having it for several years, and then it leads to the peritonitis. So there's just a lot of unknowns because we don't know what she was like before, whether she caught anything, whether that could have led to the peritonitis, which is often follows up from a feline coronavirus as well, but we have no idea about those things. Now, thinking again about intervention, I think that if this becomes something that the reserve sees often, they might do blood tests to determine that so that they can better manage that area. Mindy says, is feline AIDS or leukemia limited to domestic cats? I don't think so.
No, I think feline AIDS is fairly well documented in lions. I think leukemia less so, but I think it has been recorded. But feline AIDS or HIV or whatever we are supposed to call it, was it FIV1? I think I saw was the most common one that I was reading about. Certainly, and I seem to recall that something like 80% of lions in a particular area had that they showed evidence of it. But I think it's one of those things again, just like HIV, that it's a slow acting thing, and you can have it and not show any particular ill effects over a period of time.
Interesting. And it's amazing how many things that I've seen that I think are limited to domestic populations, but actually not.
No, I
Uh,
think maybe, and I'm just suggesting here, but yeah, that the wild population has perhaps better established antibodies to deal with these sorts of things, having built up a natural immunity, whereas in captivity, diets are different and situations and the habitat at which they are spending their time is slightly different. And so it may just be that the wild animals are better equipped to deal with some of these things.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of the time in wild populations, animals, we often don't know when an animal has died, and we just know that they haven't been seen again. And with our domestic populations, you know for certain this animal has died, and it's very likely that you're going to find out why from your vet. And that's not a luxury that we have in game reserves with wild animals. So we have a lack of information, and that's also part of the natural process. If an animal doesn't have the antibodies and doesn't inherit those from their parent, if that is something that happens for those viruses, um, they are likely to die because natural selection is constantly sifting for those fitter individuals. So in domestic populations, we've kind of skewed that because we can just take our pet to the vet and sort it out. Kaoru, you said you didn't know that animals can get TB. Yes, they can. And bovine TB is something that it used to be quite common, and now being able to breed out TB in bovine populations can make you a very rich person. Mindy asks, is TB as contagious in animals as it is in people? I don't know if I can answer that.
Yeah, I also don't know if officially, but it's spread the same way through aerosol
Mhm.
contact, and that's why the problem with something like lions being social, cats spending time together, feeding off the same carcass, grooming one another, sleeping on top of each other, it does tend, if one has it, they tend to all get it.
Oh, that's also something I didn't think about. Um, with lions being social cats and how much more easily it can spread compared to, say, a leopard or a cheetah that gets bovine TB.
I did see something that it's apparently more prevalent in males than females due to during the hunt process that the male lions often on a buffalo will go for the muzzle. So it is in direct contact with the saliva and the aerosol borne. I don't know whether is it a bacteria or whatever the appropriate term is for that pathogen, let's call it that. So that's one of the reasons why apparently it's often seen more in males or the young males who are hunting buffalo when they are younger. If they go for the muzzle and it happens to be a TB carrying buffalo, that there is a far greater opportunity of it being passed on.
That's very interesting. Huh. Well, we don't know what's happened with these lionesses. I would really have liked to see maybe a closer view of the second lioness to see maybe if she was in the same condition, then it could tell us a little bit about how contagious that is. Because remember, there's also um, endoparasites that could be at work, and that's not going to be contagious. So, a lot more information for us to gather there. But
Yeah, absolutely. It could be just a stomach disorder.
yeah, exactly. But we don't know, and we'll just have to keep an eye on the Ancora cam. But we've already used 23 minutes, so how about we move on to it's really interesting discussions, everyone. It's super interesting discussions. But how about we move on to our next clip? And next up, we are also at Ancora, but this time we're going to look at a little bravery. Why am I not surprised?
Yeah, I thought better off completely standing its ground against the adult. But they are amazing little things, those blacksmith lapwings. So they are fearless. Those and the thick knees. Yeah, I mean to stand down an elephant, and it's. I'm sure we've both done it before on a walk. It's
Yeah.
quite an intimidating thing, and we're standing 10 times as tall as that lapwing. So fair play.
Oh yeah, and you're always, even if you're standing down the elephant and you know that this is the right thing to do, your brain is going, get out of there. And the blacksmith lapwing's like, no. And we're gonna make some noise and continue to make noise.
Well, I think
Um,
so. Chances are that well, I see Kirsten has just put a note up as well. I was going to say for a lapwing to have the bottle to do that, there must have been a nest or some youngsters, and it does look as if they have two chicks, so that would make sense. But still, it's an incredible feat of bravery.
Absolutely. But I also think that, and not to take anything away from the lapwings, but if I had a pair of wings and I could start fights here and there, knowing very well that I could fly away at any moment, I'd probably be that brave too.
Yeah, I fair enough. So at one point where the trunk came out, it sort of hopped up. It was ready to move if required. Yeah.
Definitely. And I always think about lapwings because, if their first successful clutch or their first clutch is not successful, then they continue to breed through the season. And I always feel bad for them because sometimes they go slightly into the dry season and they will have their nests at the exact area where large herbivores are coming through to get to the only water source that's currently available. And I imagine that there must be so many trampled eggs. But maybe that's what gives them the gusto. They've been through it, they know how this goes.
Absolutely, yeah. Learned behavior. It obviously works. That's why we attempt to stand our ground as well. But it just goes to show that there is method to the madness, as they say.
Yes, absolutely. And Bridget, you say you love it when small Ellies do this. I know it is just the cutest. And I also love that we get to see the almost get a glimpse into the developmental changes as they grow because you see young elephants do this, and then as they get older and they become adults, they no longer give time to this kind of behavior. It's useless. It does nothing for their survival. So it's almost like a little glimpse and a little bit of recognition of what it looks like for humans as well. We always we have more time to play and less we're thinking less about what's important and whether this is a good use of my time when, say, you're 10 years old. Mindy, you say now that is hysterical. Way to go, Lapwing. Yeah, that's definitely one way to protect your kin. And Karu, you also say that is hilarious. It is very funny and it's a real treasure to see something like that on a game drive. All right, next up, let's head over to Hwange Safari Lodge and have a look at another elephant who's in a bit of a pickle. Very cute pickle.
Cute, necessarily.
Confused and cute.
Trying to clear himself a space.
I'm not sure who's more confused, the buffalo or the elephant.
It's strange how they react. I was at a reserve about 3 or 4 months ago and was out on a drive there, and there was a huge herd of buffalo. I think it was probably about 400 or 500 strong, and two elephant bulls. They were around the water, and two elephant bulls came to drink. So we thought, right, we're going to see some action here. They're going to scatter the buffalo, but they didn't. They just casually walked through. The buffalo moved out the way slightly. The elephants moved through. The buffalo closed the gap behind them, and there was no interaction whatsoever, which I was quite surprised about. I see these ones at the front, obviously drinking quite contently, but this one, yeah, I think maybe just got surrounded unexpectedly. or went off looking for trouble and bit off more than he could chew.
Mhm. Yep, that's not unlikely. I always think to myself, and this may be maybe a bit of a romanticized idea of what goes on in animal brains, but I wonder if there's some kind of understanding between certain animals.
Well, I imagine this is a young male. We've got water there, and you know as well as I do that there's nothing quite like a teenage boy around the water to go and chase stuff around. We just saw it with what you said about the lapwing, and evidently that behavior is still present. You can see him just, he's done well to clear an entire area around him. But yeah, I think
Yeah.
the more experienced ones are more relaxed.
But you are right, he's done really well because at the beginning of this clip, he was, the buffaloes were in within a meter or two of him. But he's really showed off how macho he is, which is, of course, the purpose of this display.
Absolutely.
So we've run out of time, but how about we have a quick look at our last clip? And we're going to head over to Lentore in Kenya and have a look at a terrapin catching a bit of a ride. Oh, that is not the ride I expected to see.
I've actually seen this before on a Lentore camp as well, and I'd be interested to know your take on it because this is not mating behavior.
Oh,
There's no cloacal touching or whatever the appropriate terminology should be.
this is a
It
family
really is
show.
just, I'm going to sit on you. I assume it's some form of courtship, but I don't know. Or uh,
Dominance. I was
dominant behavior. Thank you.
I was thinking dominance because I think there's no other reason to climb on top of somebody except
Hammercocks do it, don't they?
now I'm not sure if maybe the top one got it wrong because I saw some movement in the genital area. But we also know that when animals show dominance, then often there is that kind of growth in the genital area.
Yeah, I wasn't quite sure what was happening when I've seen this before, and I'm none the wiser, I have to say. It's quite funny to watch, though.
It is particularly this angle, where you're not even trying anymore. And what is that walking on the ground? There was something walking on the ground, a little insect.
And a bee
Little bee? It seemed bigger. Oh, it is the bee. It is the bee.
is a bee.
Very, very interesting. I can't say I've ever seen
Pass.
something like that before, ever. But my guess would be dominance behavior, but also the one on the top looked smaller.
I was trying to think, is it the same in Terrapins as other females larger than the males? Or is it purely an age thing? Is there a difference in size, sex like raptors? Are the females larger?
I think at least so this looked like a marsh terrapin. It had the yellow underside. Actually, I wasn't even looking at the ID. I was too busy looking at what on earth was going on. But I know in serrated hinge terrapins, the males are slightly larger.
Hmm.
So I would
Yeah, no,
imagine
I also so I didn't look at the ID to be honest. I'm not sure what they get up in that area of Kenya versus what we've got here, but the marsh serrated hinged, if you can't see the hinge, it's I spent many hours trying to decipher a way to tell the two apart.
it doesn't help that the marsh terrapin also has hinge-like patterns at the edge of their shell as well. It's not as if, I mean, in very basic books, you'd say serrated hinge terrapin has a serrated edge to their shell, and then the marsh terrapin has a smoother edge. That is not, it does not apply in real life, everyone. One thing that I have found helpful though is that marsh terrapins are I mean, again, this doesn't help unless you have boat terrapins, but they tend to be smaller than serrated hinge terrapins. And the other thing is that serrated hinge terrapins tend to be in permanent water bodies, whereas marsh terrapins, you may see them in these ephemeral pans, so semi-permanent water bodies. And also, marsh terrapins are not going to be in the same water bodies as crocodiles because they're readily preyed upon by crocodiles. But serrated hinge terrapins, they're the ones that you might see on the backs of hippos that they really don't care. You know, I feel
I
they're more
normally just
confident.
look at the shell. The marsh terrapins also have a much shallower, less extreme shell. But like I said, unless you've got the two next to each other, and one's like this and one's like this, just in isolation, it can be very difficult to figure it out. So I think just terrapin is normally sufficient.
Some other random thing that I'm not sure there's any scientific backing to it, but that I've noticed is that marsh terrapins tend to be a little yellower underneath than the serrated hinge terrapin, but again, that's completely relative. So it doesn't really help. And the other thing is that the scutes on the first set of scutes nearest to the neck on the marsh terrapin, the middle one, to me, looks fatter and wider and broader than the one on the serrated hinge terrapin. Again, no scientific evidence, just my observations. Anyway, everyone, we are so glad to be able to go over time so we could see those wonderful clips, but it is time to say goodbye. So thank you, everyone, for your questions and your comments. It's wonderful to be back in the hot seat and be able to chat to all of you. I do miss you guys when I'm not around. And you too, Ben.
Oh, thanks, Trish. Well, it
Yeah.
was lovely to see you again and to be a part of, yeah, some very interesting clips. And thank you, everybody, for your questions and comments. And it was indeed a pleasure to be back.
Yes. See you all next time and have a wonderful day, morning, night, wherever you are in the world. Bye for now.